Week 11 of college football is here, and it's time to take a look at some previews and predictions. We'll start with a Thursday night game between the UTSA Roadrunners and the USF Bulls. UTSA just stomped Tulane last week, and USF is looking to keep its playoff hopes alive. USF comes into this one 6-2, and they are currently tied with 5 other teams at the top of the American. So they're looking to continue their goal of making the college football playoff. And there's something to be said about this team where you feel confident that they could be the biggest problem for any team that they face in the college football playoff and have the best chance of any team potentially win a game. There are plenty of other teams you could discuss, but USF has a strong case for that. The problem is that they have to win out, and it's not going to be easy. This is not going to be an easy task to beat this UTSA team, especially if the Roadrunners are playing like they did last week. Now, Byron Brown has been as advertised. We talked about this coming into the year and what he could potentially do for this team, and he has lived up to the hype. He has carried this team at times, and even though they've had quite a few injuries, there have been times where Byron Brown has just done it all, even when people are healthy. The nice thing is that the guys that are working with him, the guys that are rotating in, have stepped up in a big way too. So when you've had guys like Chaz Nimrod go down, Keyshawn Singleton stepped up. Other guys have stepped up in his place. Jeremiah Coger stepped up as well. So you've seen guys deliver when they need them to. And that's part of college football, unfortunately. Part of college football is that you're going to sustain injuries. You're going to have guys go down, and how do you respond to that? How do you work through that? That is a big question for every team, and USF has done a great job of battling through those injuries. Now, the big question for USF is what can their defense do against a UTSA offense that I think is finding its momentum. It's finding its true form. And we talked about that coming into the year. What could this group look like? USF's defense has to be disruptive. One thing that Tulane did not do a good job is limiting the explosive plays and disrupting what Owen McCown wanted to do. So guys like Mac Harris, Jalen Schuler, those are guys that are going to have to get this group to play at that level. They're going to have to get disruptive plays and force UTSA into a lot of third and long situations, because this Roadrunners offense is more than capable of moving the ball down the field efficiently. And if they continue their balance that they found last week, the Bulls are definitely in trouble. But this USF defense has shined at times. The defense has been really good at times. We've also seen some lapses in their abilities. So I think that getting them to play at a certain level is going to be huge to be able to slow down this team that they're facing, as well as make that run to the playoff. And at 6-2, you just can't afford any more losses. And again, with the group of 5 only getting one spot, you already have one conference loss. You need to find a way to continue winning and get into the American Conference Championship game. From there, it's up to you on where you go at that point. So if you're USF, there are plenty of opportunities for this team to be able to move the ball down the field. I don't think that UTSA's defense is anything elite that USF has not seen yet. I mean, the best defense they saw is Miami's. Nobody's going to compare to that. And UTSA's defense has had its moments of good play, but they still have plenty of deficiencies that USF can expose. And the fact that they're 14-point favorites speaks to what this team is capable of doing in this game. Now, when you go to the UTSA side of things, this is a Roadrunners team that started the year with hopes of making the American Conference Championship. And while those are still a long way from happening, they need some help. They're still technically in the race. There's a lot that needs to happen for them, but they're playing good football right now. And last week, they took down one of those conference contenders in Tulane. Now, Jeff Traylor has fallen off in terms of one of the hotter commodities for any head coaching opportunities, but it's very clear that he still knows what he's doing. He still very much can coach and is very good at what he does. So if people have questions about his abilities, they should probably stop asking those questions. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to build a program. And it's clear that even when things aren't going right, he can turn things around. Last week was a perfect example of that. And last week was also the example of this is what UTSA can do. This is the type of damage that UTSA can do. Owen McCown looked really good, and that's helpful because Robert Henry Jr. has, for the most part, been carrying this offense. 120 carries, 955 yards. He's averaging 8 yards a carry still. After 8 games, he's still averaging 8 yards per carry, which is insane. 9 touchdowns for him. He's also had 15 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. When they need an explosive play, Robert Henry is the guy that they go to. Now they found that, hey, our offense can be more balanced. We don't need the running back to carry our team. And we saw that last week. The one thing with this team is we didn't know who was going to be that go-to wide receiver. We didn't know if this was going to be a by committee approach or if they had an alpha. Now, you already lost one wide receiver before the season even began. Decorian Clark was supposed to be part of this team, but he's out. He's preparing for the NFL draft. That being said, we knew this group had talent. You had Devin McEwen coming back. David Amador was coming back as well. So you knew you had options. It's just who was going to be that guy. And so far, we haven't seen someone step up as that alpha, but it's been more of that by committee approach. Devin McEwen, 460 yards, 6 touchdowns. AJ Wilson, a nice new face for this team. 335 yards. He's averaging 20.9 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. Amador has 237 yards. Houston Thomas, the tight end, 171. So we've seen a number of guys step up. And even last week, we saw multiple players deliver when they needed them the most. So that's really exciting for a team that is trying to make a strong run towards the end of the year in the last 4 games. Stopping this offense, though, is really where you have the biggest concerns. This is not a group that has been disruptive. This is not a group that has dominated on the defensive side of the ball. And now you're facing one of the most explosive offenses in college football. That is going to be a challenge that you haven't seen yet. Now, you've played Texas A&M, and I think they did a pretty good job of making explosive plays on offense, but that defense did not do anything against Texas A&M. And USF's offense has the ability to put up points. So in terms of how this game plays out, it really comes down to what UTSA defense are we going to see? Is this a group that's going to limit what the offense does like they did against Tulane? The problem is that you're going against a quarterback in Byron Brown that is way different than what you saw last week. He's way better than the quarterbacks you saw against Tulane. So that is a different level of difficulty. USF's going to win this game. I think that they're just too good, and maybe UTSA is still going to be on track to finish the year strong, but USF is going to win this one. I think this is a very focused team, a very motivated team, and they are still very much aware of what is still on the table for them to go forward and be able to win a playoff game if you're able to play at that level. But just for sure, getting into the playoff, winning the American title is still very much on the table. The Bulls are going to win, and they're going to keep those goals alive. Houston travels to UCF in what was a former American Conference game, and now it is a Big 12 game, which is still weird to say. Houston is 7-2 coming into this game, and they're 1-point underdogs. The West Virginia game maybe exposed some things with the Houston Cougars, but I think that this is still very much a tough team, a good team, and Willie Fritz is going to have them bouncing back to play a lot better than they did last week, specifically defensively. Now, UCF, Taven Jackson's had his struggles, but they're still going to ride with him, and it's clear that he is their best option. This team, I think, in UCF has played better than I think a lot of people anticipated, and they still very much can make a bowl game. And that was something that we talked about coming into this year. Would a bowl game be possible for this team? And Scott Frost deserves a lot of credit for being able to get them to play at a good level. And now they're having opportunities to surprise a lot of people. And they're 1-point favorites against a Houston team that up until last week was in the conversation for the Big 12 championship. So that speaks to how UCF is playing and as well as what they are capable of doing. Houston is just going to be a different challenge to be able to pull off a win like this. So Houston It comes down to Connor Wegman. Made some poor decisions last week. The offense did what it could, though, at times, put up explosive plays. The defense, plain and simple, has to be better, has to play at a different level, and it has to find ways to slow down this UCF offense. Now, UCF's defense is going to have its own problems, but they are a pretty good group as well. I think they're a very underrated group, have the ability to make disruptive plays, and if they can do that enough, they're going to be able to win. I'm very curious, too, what is the atmosphere going to be like for UCF at home? They're 4-4. Is that enough to get fans in the seats and get them excited? That's going to be a big question. I do think that Houston is going to win this game. I think that they bounce back. The West Virginia game was more of a blip of just a poor performance from them. And if there's a guy that's going to get them back on track, Willie Fritz is probably high on that list. Then we go to Northwestern at USC. USC is a 14-point favorite in this one, and Northwestern deserves a lot of praise for what they've done so far. They have been a surprise, a big surprise in the Big Ten. Now, a lot of people have been talking about UCLA, but Northwestern's one game away from making a bowl game. So you have a lot to discuss with the Northwestern Wildcats, and a lot of surprises so far this year we've seen from them. The problem is that they're going on the road to USC, a team that just found a way to win against Nebraska last week, and that's really exciting for a team that's struggled on the road. Now, they do have things to sort out. The consistency has not been there for USC, but this is a team that is still very much able to win double-digit games. It's not going to be easy, but it is possible. Northwestern is a tough team to beat. So how well can Lincoln Riley get his team to get up for a Northwestern team that doesn't bring as much hype as a Nebraska, as some of the teams that they've played so far this year? You look at what happened against Illinois. That wasn't exactly a team that's easy to get up for, even though Illinois was good. USC has to find a way that in the Big Ten, you are going to face some teams that don't carry the same weight as others. How do you treat them the same as those big-time teams is going to be a big question. I'm going to go with USC. I don't really have concerns about them winning this game because it's at home. If it was on the road, it might be a different story, but Northwestern winning on the road, I think, is not very likely. Another big game in the American. We have, again, that 6-team tie at the top of the American. Tulane at Memphis. Tulane's coming off of that very disappointing loss where they just got destroyed against UTSA on the road, and now they're having another tough road game in what is going to be another tough environment in Memphis. Tulane's got to figure some things out. Now, the defense had a lapse last week. They struggled mightily to stop that UTSA offense, but their own offense didn't exactly do much to help them out. So if you're Tulane, you kind of look at how do we bounce back? How do we flush last week and just move on, right? John Summerall's done a great job of getting his team to move on in various different situations, and this is another opportunity. You have a chance to continue your hopes to win the American Conference, and you get a direct opportunity to impact another team's chances in that same race. Now, Jake Retzlaff or Brendan Sullivan, whoever they're going to play at quarterback, has to be more consistent as a passer. And we've talked about this for most of the year. Jake Retzlaff and Brendan Sullivan, good runners at quarterback. We like what we see from them. However, the passing has not been consistent. There is not a threat as much as you would like to move the ball down the field, whether that's deep, intermediate routes. That has not been there. And we knew that there were going to be limitations, but how consistent can you be where you're going to be able to move the ball, where you can at least force teams to defend the pass against you? That is going to be a big question, because to be completely honest, the best passer from last week was Jimmy Callaway on his one touchdown pass that he threw, and he's a wide receiver. That's how bad it was last week. And not that there haven't been struggles before for this team at quarterback, but they've at least been able to navigate those. When your defense is also struggling to get stops, that's where things get real dicey for this team. Now, this is a team that is, again, still hanging on and unfortunately has to battle through their head coach getting a ton of recognition, a ton of love. And when you're good at the group of 5 level, Power 4 teams are going to notice, and they're going to eventually take your coach. That's just how it works right now. Now, John Summerall has a unique approach to how he handles this type of stuff, but it's still on the minds of all of his kids. you'd be naive to say that, oh, well, they're not thinking about that. No, they are. It's just how well are they able to refocus on the task at hand. Playing a Memphis team that is very dangerous still and very capable of doing exactly what UTSA did to this Tulane team last week should be the primary focus. They have to figure out, how do we bounce back against a very good football team? And Tulane's done good things this year. It's not that they're struggling. It's just that they had a rough game. And they've had 2 games where they haven't looked their best and they got punished for it. And one of them was the Ole Miss game. The other one was last week. Now you have to bounce back because your goals are still very much ahead of you. And this is still a good football team. The offense has to find that balance. The defense is going to have to figure out, how do you stop this Memphis offense? So when you look at what Memphis is going to be able to do, they have good balance. They really like to run the football, and they have a couple of receivers that present challenges for this Tulane secondary. How do you navigate those challenges? The front group has had the defensive line and linebackers, I should say, for Tulane have shown big time flashes of being disruptive and taking over a game. And the secondary is no stranger to turning the ball over. This secondary is very good at turning the ball over, especially when the front group is doing its part. So if that group can continue doing that, then Memphis is going to be in a tough spot. The big challenge this week is you're adding an element that you didn't have last week with Owen McCown as much, is mobility. Brendan Lewis is a mobile quarterback that's going to be able to escape some of the pressures that Tulane provides. How do you keep contained? How do you keep him from gashing you with his legs? And how do you prevent some of those scrambles that extend plays and keep things alive for a team that, again, is very dangerous? Memphis is explosive. Memphis is a dangerous football team offensively, and you have to find ways to be able to slow them down. On the other side of the ball, you also have a Memphis defense that is kind of similar to Tulane in a way, where they're kind of a scrappy group at times. They find ways to get the job done, but they also have guys that are able to be disruptive. So on the Memphis side of things, it's going to be, you need a big game from Brendan Lewis. The quarterback play is going to be a big time difference maker for either side. If it's Jake Retzlaff playing well or Brendan Sullivan, then Tulane's going to have that advantage. Brendan Lewis, though, has shown it a little bit more consistently than those Tulane quarterbacks. We've seen him do it a lot more consistently throughout this season. And the game against USF was a perfect example. Playing on an injury, gritting out a win. He is just the great quarterback that you wanted. And this is exactly what Memphis thought they were going to get when they brought him into campus. When they brought him to this program, especially after there were questions about, are they going to rebuild or are they trying to reload? The answer was reload. And Ryan Silverfield deserves a ton of credit for that decision to say, hey, we're not going to sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. We want to win this football game. We're going to win this conference. We're going to win whatever it is that we need to win. That was the mentality that he told his team that they're going to have in 2025. And so far, Brendan Lewis has been the perfect example of that. Not the most highly coveted transfer by any means. However, he has been a perfect fit for this offense. His legs obviously get the job done. We talked about that. 562 yards. He leads the team in rushing. 8 touchdowns, leads the team as well. He has over 1,800 yards passing, 10 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. So again, he is not going to be a gunslinger by any means, but he is still very capable of running this offense and providing balance. The rushing attack has been led by Sutton Smith, and when they've needed an explosive play, Sutton Smith has been that guy. You also have Greg Duraze coming back from injury. He's healthy once again. That's a guy who is a dangerous weapon for this team as well. So you have 2 players that are averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. They have explosive ability, and that's something Tulane has to worry about in addition to Brendan Lewis. The biggest emergence, though, is coming into this year, we had questions about Memphis's passing attack, and we knew that the quarterback would play a huge role in that, and so far, Brendan Lewis has delivered. But who is going to be that wide receiver 1? That was the big question we had. And even right before the year, they didn't have that answer. You had guys that you were maybe considering, But then you bring in Cortez Brown. You brought him in late, literally weeks before the season began, from Nevada, and he has been a bright spot in this offense. And the fact that he was able to get up to speed as quickly as he did tells you a lot about his abilities. 39 catches for 632 yards and 7 touchdowns. You'd like to see other guys get a little bit more involved. There's not another player on this team that has more than 1 touchdown receiving, but that's kind of the nature of the offense. And Bram's been the guy that's delivered time and time again, and it hasn't just been routine plays either. He's made some highlight reel grabs that are going to be on SportsCenter. They're going to be talked about, and he is a dangerous threat for a Tulane secondary that is very good. Now, flipping to the defensive side of the ball for Memphis, this is a group that has played really well at times, and they've been extremely disruptive as well. The linebacker position has been as expected. You brought in some transfers that you were hoping would deliver, and so far the hit rate on all of those have been really good. Sam Brumfeld leads the team in tackles with 66, also has 12 tackles for loss. Drew Watts, Cortez Bram's teammate from Nevada, 50 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss. Everett Rusa, 45 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss. DeMarco Ward, 48 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. This is a group that has stepped up in a big way, and that's a group that hasn't played together before this year. So the fact that they're doing what they're doing speaks to the coaching and what they're able to do. And Ryan Silverfield deserves a lot of credit for this team. That is going to be a fun group to watch and a fun battle to see how do they slow down this Tulane offense, because Tulane has the ability to make life very difficult for Memphis, and it's going to be a battle. It's going to be fun, and Memphis is favored by 6 points right now. I have a feeling that that line is going to go down as the week progresses, and you're going to see, I think, an absolute battle between these teams. I'm going to go with the Memphis Tigers to win this one. I trust what they do a little bit more. Brendan Lewis is more reliable at the quarterback position, and he's played well in big games before, and that's the edge I think that Memphis needs to win this game. Indiana goes to Penn State, and before the season, this was a game that we talked about as a potential big-time game. Now, Indiana's a 14.5 point favorite on the road. Penn State's without James Franklin, who they fired earlier this year, and these two teams could not be in different places. Indiana's 9-0, looking like arguably the best team in college football, and Penn State is trying to figure out how do we manage whatever is going on here? How do we figure out how to show some strength? You don't have your starting quarterback. Guys are still playing hard for the most part, but it's going to be tough to beat this Indiana team at home. But the one thing I think with college football is you just never know when somebody's going to be able to pull off an upset. And I'm not predicting, I do think that Indiana is going to win this game, but a team like Penn State, with the talent that they have, with the home field advantage here, there is a chance that that potentially happens. Now, nothing about Indiana screams that they're going to get upset, but you also didn't think that about other teams either. It's just that Indiana and Ohio State look like they're just on a different level. I don't know how else to say that. It's just completely different style of play and winning ability. Now, if it was an upset, that wouldn't be surprising, right? Because everybody seems to have a weakness. Everybody seems to have some sort of difficulty at some point. And Indiana's had a few injuries now that maybe are stacking up. So we'll see what happens here. Again, Indiana is going to win this game. I don't have a ton of concerns about Indiana's ability to move the ball against this Penn State defense. I don't really trust that Penn State and Ethan Grunkmeyer are going to be able to move the ball against this Indiana defense. So Indiana is going to win. I don't have a concern there, but again, the fact that people keep losing football games, even no matter how good they look, it feels like that's creeping in the back of my head. The problem is that I don't have any confidence that what I see from Indiana and Ohio State says that they're capable of losing a game like this. So Indiana's going to win. They probably cover the spread and take care of business to get to 10-0. Georgia at Mississippi State. Georgia is a 7.5 point favorite, and the Bulldogs are looking to make a strong run at the SEC championship. Now, playing at Mississippi State is a different challenge, but I think Mississippi State's excitement, the aura surrounding that program has died a little bit, but they're still better than people expected. They're 5-4, but playing Georgia is going to be a completely different challenge that they have not seen yet. So that's going to be a tough game for them to win, but Georgia is going to have to take care of business. This Mississippi State team has the ability to create some explosive plays. They can be disruptive, and Georgia isn't the most dominant team that we've seen under Kirby Smart right now, but they still have the ability to continue fighting. And honestly, this group continues to fight. They continue to play hard, and they're at a point where even if things aren't going right, they just trust that as long as they continue to play this way, they're going to find success. And so far that's worked. They haven't had the prettiest wins at times, but sometimes it's just going to be that way. There's not a ton of elite teams in college football this year, especially not in the SEC. The SEC is about as close as it's ever been, and Georgia's no exception to that. Now, if Gunnar Stockton can play well, that is going to really dictate how this team does. I think he's the biggest X factor on their team, and how he does with the play calling is going to be a big question. Mississippi State, kind of the same thing with Blake Shapen in this offense. How do they put up points against a good Georgia defense is going to be the big question. The Dogs are favored by 7.5. I don't really have any concerns about them winning this game, so I'm going to go with Georgia to beat Mississippi State. BYU at Texas Tech. Now, BYU is the only undefeated team in the Big 12 remaining, and they're going to Texas Tech to play a really, really tough environment, a really good team, and it's going to be fun to watch. Texas Tech right now, as I'm recording, is favored by 10 points. As a team that's 8-1 and has a loss to Arizona State, that's not really surprising, even though what I just said could maybe create some surprise. Texas Tech is a playoff-worthy team. BYU is probably the more underrated team, or most underrated team in college football that's undefeated. I think there are a lot of people that question the legitimacy of this team's record, the legitimacy of this team, and I think a lot of people still have questions about their true freshman quarterback. Now, Bear Bachmeier deserves a lot of praise for what he has done this year. Thrust into a tough role. Jake Retzlaff was supposed to start. He obviously moves on, and Bear Bachmeier comes in and is in the starting role earlier than expected. All he has done is put his head down, play to the best of his ability, and win 8 football games. You can't really knock the kid for doing that. You can't really knock the kid for much. So it's kind of hard to get on him for a lot because he's truly just been a gamer. This is just going to be his toughest test that he's faced this year. Now, when you look at his numbers, completing nearly 63% of his passes, over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns. He's also been good as a runner, 94 carries for 408 yards and 9 touchdowns. The combination of him and LJ Martin has been great for the rushing attack. LJ Martin leads the team, 132 carries, 789 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And this was a group that we thought at running back that was going to be deep. LJ Martin has basically said, nope, this is my job. This is my opportunity. I'm going to take that. And that's been great for this team. That's been great for their ability to move the ball down the field. And they don't have to usher in a new player every single drive, or they don't have to rotate people. LJ Martin has given them some stability in the backfield next to that true freshman quarterback. That being said, should something happen, they still have plenty of talent. I think that people are forgetting about the amount of talent that we were excited to see for BYU. It's still there. It's still very much there, and there's still plenty of excitement surrounding that running back room. It's just that LJ Martin is in the spotlight right now. So this is a group that still has plenty of depth and shouldn't have any concerns about how they're going to run the football. And especially with Bear Bachmeier being the guy he is and what he's done, I think that you're in a good position regardless of if LJ Martin's having himself a game or not, because teams are going to force Bachmeier to beat them. It's just going to come down to whether or not he's ready for that moment. Now, one other thing that has been really nice is Chase Roberts has played to his ability at wide receiver. He's lived up to the hype. 32 catches for 591 yards and 4 touchdowns. One of the questions we had about this group coming into this year was who else is on that depth chart that's going to be able to deliver. You lost some talent that was pretty good for you, and you had questions about who's the next guy up. Parker Kingston was one of those guys. We knew what he could do as a returner. We had questions about his abilities as a wide receiver. So far this year, he has stepped up in a massive way, and that's helped Chase Roberts as well. 34 catches for him, 516 yards, and 4 touchdowns as a receiver. Tight end Carson Ryan, as at times, has been good as well. So this passing attack, the questions that we had have been kind of removed. They've been answered. We don't have those questions as much anymore because of the emergence of some of those guys. So this offense is in good hands. The biggest question for this game that I have is one on Bear Bachmeier, but really the offensive line. This Texas Tech defensive line and defense in general is a massive problem for this BYU offense. If they want to keep their undefeated season alive, they are going to have to play well in the trenches. And the offensive line has quite a bit of talent to be able to make that happen. But again, this is a different level of defense that you have not seen this year. How do they handle that? How does their true freshman handle playing on the road against this type of defense? Because that's going to determine if BYU is going to surprise everybody again, or if Texas Tech is going to command the top spot in the Big 12. Now, how the flip side of things, we haven't even got into the defensive side of things for BYU. Now, if you're BYU, you had questions about this defensive line coming into this year, but I think that they've stepped up in a big way. I think that they haven't been elite, but they've been better than I think people realize. The part that's helped that a ton is the linebacker position has been as advertised. And we knew that Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly had the ability to be disruptive and make big time plays. We just didn't know who that third guy was going to be. We thought that Siali Asura was going to be part of that, and he has delivered. He has been really good, and it's helped a linebacker group that was already super talented. It also helped us the guys in front of them as well as behind them. The problem is that you are now facing a Texas Tech offense that presents the biggest challenges you've seen this year. You have a great passing attack that can move the ball quickly and multiple options that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. You also have a rushing attack that, even without Quinton Joyner, has been explosive. Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey have been phenomenal. And in a way, they've elevated their games to another level that we did not see coming. So how does BYU's defense slow them down? Disruptive plays. If this game was at BYU, you'd have the crowd factor as well. The problem is that you're going to Texas Tech, and that crowd is also very capable of making life miserable for any team that they face. That is going to be a big time challenge and a big obstacle for a team like this that is relatively inexperienced at certain positions and trying to show that they can handle this type of game. And so far, BYU has done that. We'll talk about them just in a little bit in terms of this game, but you can't really doubt them anymore. You have to assume that they're going to be competitive in this one and be able to at least hang on in this one. Now for Texas Tech, the loss to Arizona State was disappointing. It exposed some things that maybe you weren't ready for, but it also reminded you of the importance of the quarterback position. And as if you could forget about that. Baron Morton has had injuries his entire career. Baron Morton has been hurt a lot. And that is true this year as well. He has to stay healthy. For Texas Tech to have any chance of winning the Big 12 or making a playoff run, if he is not healthy, kiss the season goodbye. This is still a very good team, but they need their quarterback to get to that different level. They do not have Will Hammond anymore. The talent behind those two guys is going to ensure that you're going to struggle. And especially against a BYU team that you're definitely better. I mean, you're a 10-point favorite. You're a 10-point favorite against an undefeated team. That tells you the level of talent discrepancy. But as soon as Bear Morton goes down, that's where things get concerning. And from now on, it's even more concerning because as soon as he goes down, the uncertainty of that position is going to be huge. Now, the nice thing is that when Behren Morton is in the lineup, this team is so dangerous, way more dangerous than when Will Hammond is in the lineup. He's their best quarterback, and the passing attack is at its peak when he's playing. And we've seen this offense find balance even when he's there. So Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams have been explosive. They have taken turns being explosive for this team, and they have found ways to do a lot of exciting things thanks to Behren Morton's ability to throw the football. Teams can't just focus on the run. They also now can't just focus on defending the pass because Dickey and Williams have been absolutely dominating at times. So this is an offense that's very tough to prepare for. The problem also is that there hasn't really been one guy at wide receiver or tight end that has been the alpha. They've kind of taken their turns. So when you look at the production, you have to stop. Caleb Douglas, 41 catches, 594 yards, 4 touchdowns. Coy Aiken, 35 catches, 460 yards, 4 touchdowns. Reginald Virgil, 37 catches, 435 yards, 5 touchdowns. Terrence Carter, 27 catches, 378 yards, 5 touchdowns. Jacoby Williams has even been a part of the passing attack. 21 catches for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. How do you stop that? Nobody has the depth to be able to defend all of that. And this is a Texas Tech team that really could just go 5 wide and just be that air raid team that we expected them to be. The good problem that they encountered was even when they lost their top running back, they had 2 running backs that were like, all right, well, it's our turn. We're going to take our turn. Give us the ball. And they delivered. So this is an offense that is very tough to stop when they're playing at their peak. Again, health is going to be the big question there. But if they're playing like this, they're one of the toughest teams to beat in college football. It really just comes down to the quarterback position. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, this is a group that has been night and day from last year. Now, when you bring in the amount of talent you did at the defensive line, you kind of expected that. You expected this group to play at that level, and you expected them to take things to a championship level. David Bailey's been absolutely phenomenal. Anthony Holmes, you've seen guys like Romello Height. You've seen other players, Skylar Gill Howard. You brought in Lee Hunter as well. The defensive line has been phenomenal, and it's helped a linebacker group that was already really good play even better. Jacob Rodriguez is having a career year, and not just because he's forced to make every play. He's been disruptive. Ben Roberts is kind of slept on. Same thing with John Curry. This is a group that is going to have to be physical against this BYU team. Winning the line of scrimmage is paramount to be able to win this football game. Now, I trust this team at home. I trust that the crowd is going to be as loud as possible and make life difficult for a true freshman quarterback. And Texas Tech has to impose their will. If they do that, they're going to be just fine. Now, this is a BYU team that is going to give them trouble. BYU has been slept on. Kalani Sitake deserves a lot of praise and credit for what this team has done. And if anybody's still doubting them, that's honestly a dumb thing to do because he has done so many phenomenal things. He's exceeded expectations, and I have no doubts that they're going to keep this game competitive. Texas Tech just has to continue putting their head down and continue doing the things that they do and find ways to be explosive. If they hit explosive plays, BYU can't keep up. I do think Texas Tech is going to win this one. I'm going to not doubt BYU, so I'm going to say that this one is closer, but I do think that Texas Tech is going to win this football game to get the job done and continue their playoff hopes as well as take control of the Big 12. SMU heads to Boston College, and while normally I wouldn't be as concerned with this, the fact that they already lost to Wake Forest tells me that maybe we have to wonder about this team a little bit more. Now, Wake Forest is a much better team than Boston College, but this is a tough trip, and Rhett Lashley has to get his team refocused after a big win over Miami and find ways to slow down this offense for Boston College and Dylan Lonergan, who's back. You also have to find ways to win in what's going to be a tough environment to win in. SMU is a 10.5 point favorite, and I do think they're going to win this game, but keep an eye on this one on how SMU plays, because if they struggle once again, it's going to be concerning for this team. But SMU is going to win. I don't have too many concerns about their ability to beat a 1-8 football team, but Boston College is a tough place to play. Colorado and West Virginia, 2 3-6 teams that are trying to keep their bowl hopes alive. West Virginia is coming off that big win over Houston. Colorado is kind of scrambling right now and trying to figure some things out. Now, West Virginia is a team that I trust a little bit more than Colorado, and I think that they're going to be a team that plays strong towards the end of the year. You look at what they did against Houston, the offense clearly was firing on all cylinders. The defense made some disruptive plays, including a pick six. So that's a group that's playing with a lot more confidence. Colorado has to travel across the country, play on the road, and that's going to be a concern in my opinion. So I'm going to go with West Virginia to cover the spread as well as win this football game here. James Madison at Marshall. James Madison is 7-1 and their playoff hopes are still very strong, very much intact. Marshall is trying to play the role of spoiler, and you have to give them credit for being better than we expected. They're 4-4. I think a lot of people expected them maybe to have one, maybe two wins at this point, but beating James Madison at home is going to be tough. The Dukes are 13.5-point favorites, and they are playing with a confidence that is unmatched in the Sun Belt. Alonzo Barnett is on an absolute tear right now. He is just dominating the competition that they face, and this offense is moving the ball at will. They have no problems moving the football down the field, so Marshall is going to have their hands full for sure. They're going to have troubles stopping this James Madison offense, and how well they do that might dictate how close this game could be or how much of a blowout it's going to be. But I'm going with James Madison. I don't think that Marshall has the ability to slow down a team that is red hot right now, especially offensively. Southern Miss at Arkansas State. While this is a game that not a lot of people are going to pay attention to, it has big time implications in the Sun Belt West. Southern Miss is a 5.5-point favorite, and they are currently sitting atop of that division. Arkansas State is one game behind them, so a win puts them in the driver's seat in a way for that division title, and they're still very much capable of winning this football game. The problem is that you have to slow down a Southern Miss team that is honestly one of the better teams in the Sun Belt. Arkansas State's had its challenges. Southern Miss under Charles Huff continues playing at a high level and an elite level that's going to be really tough to stop. I'm going to go with Southern Miss in this one. Arkansas State and Jalen Raynor have the ability to potentially pull off a surprise here, but I trust that Southern Miss, from what I've seen, is going to be able to win this one and continue sitting at the top of the Sun Belt West. Temple at Army, a very underrated game. Army is 6.5-point favorite right now, and that's really surprising given how Temple has played. They're 5-4. They've played a lot better, I think, than Army has, but Army is that triple option attack that you're going to have to stop. Temple is playing with a ton of confidence under Casey Keeler, and it's going to be a challenge to stop that triple option attack. It's not going to be easy. It's going to give you opportunities to play discipline. Now, Temple is not without their flaws, right? And their defense at times has struggled to stop opposing offenses. So that's where this comes in. But the fact that they're almost a full touchdown favorite is kind of surprising. So I'm actually going to go with Temple. I think that they're going to be able to cover the spread for sure, but I trust that they're going to be able to win this game. If Army continues playing a lot better than they have, then I think that that's going to be a really interesting component of this offense to watch, or this team. I trust Jeff Monken, but this is going to be, I think, a back and forth battle. I'm just going to go with Temple in this one here. Missouri State at Liberty. Believe it or not, both of them are still in contention for the Conference USA Championship, which is surprising given that this is Missouri State's first season as an FBS team, and Liberty has struggled mightily this year. I think a lot of people wrote off the Liberty Flames early in this season, and it's not really that surprising why. They're 7.5-point favorites in this one, though, and they still have everything ahead of them. Now, they need some things to happen. Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State don't have a conference loss, but Liberty only has the one loss. So they're still in contention here. They're still very much in that conversation. And Missouri State is also up there. When you look at the teams that are still in contention, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State are 4-0 in conference play. Western Kentucky is 5-1. Missouri State and Liberty are 3-1 in conference play. So this game has major implications for what this team, either team, can do. And I think that Missouri State was really overlooked heading into this year outside of certain people, myself included. this is a team that is still very much in contention. It's just going to be tough for them to beat a Liberty team that is suddenly playing better, maybe a little bit more motivated, knowing that Conference USA title is on the line, and they're 7.5 point favorites. So if Missouri State can find a way to slow down that offense, they'll be in a good position to win. But I haven't seen that consistently enough from Missouri State to be able to make that happen. So I'm going with Liberty here to put themselves near the top of the conference and keep those title hopes alive. Maryland at Rutgers. Maryland's coming off an absolute dud of a game. You had 5 turnovers, you gave up 55 points to Indiana, and now you have to go on the road to a Rutgers team that is much better than their record indicates. Maryland is a 1.5 point favorite, but they need to find a way to bounce back. There's growing pressure on Mike Locksley to win, and Malik Washington has been exposed a little bit as a freshman quarterback. And we knew that was going to happen at times. When you have a freshman quarterback, there's always going to be a time where you need him to step up, or you're putting him in a tough position and he doesn't deliver. That's going to be a challenge at any point. They're going to play a Rutgers team that can give him a lot of trouble as well, that can put him in tough positions. How he navigates this challenge will be interesting to watch. Now, Rutgers has its own issues. The offense has explosive ability, but hasn't been super consistent. The defense at times has looked good, but they've also struggled to slow teams down. Basically comes down to whichever team limits their mental mistakes more. How does Rutgers limit some of the big plays that they've given up? Can Maryland's wide receivers finally consistently catch the football? That's going to be a big question. I am going to go with Maryland to win this game. I think that they bounce back and get back on track, but Rutgers is going to be a tough team to beat on the road. Texas A&M at Missouri. Now, Missouri is going to be without Bo Perbula. That is going to be a tough one for them to navigate. And Texas A&M is undefeated and playing about as well as we've ever seen them play. So that's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. It comes down to whether or not Missouri can move the ball with their offense. It's going to come down to what they have in terms of success against this Texas A&M defense. It's not going to be easy. Texas A&M is playing a lot better on both sides of the ball, and it's going to be tough. Missouri has been a tough team, though. The problem is that, do you trust Matt Zollers enough to be able to move the ball down the field consistently? Do you trust this offense to move the ball consistently? I think overall, the answer to that question is no, because of the quarterback position. Now, Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts might be doing a little bit more. Maybe the wide receivers have to elevate their game to get open a little bit more consistently. But do you trust the quarterback to get them the football? That's the biggest concern you have for Missouri right now. And if you had Bo Perbula, the question would be answered already. You have more confidence. The problem is that he's not in, and you don't know what this offense will look like. So how do they do it? Maybe they slow things down. They force Texas A&M to be efficient. Because if you're going to pull off the upset here as a 7-point underdog, you're going to have to be efficient yourself. And slowing down the pace maybe puts more pressure on Texas A&M. And the thing with this Missouri team is that your defense is capable of slowing down this Texas A&M offense. Missouri's defense does not get nearly enough credit for what they're capable of doing. The problem is that even if they do that, can your offense score enough to win this football game? That's the big question. But again, this defense is, for a lot of people, a nightmare to face. And that's what's going to keep them in this game for however long that might be, whether it's the full game or whether that's just for a period of time until Texas A&M basically just pulls away. If they're able to keep this game close, it's because the defensive line is being disruptive. Zion Young is playing like a man possessed at times. And this group has been a huge reason why they're 6-2. So if they're going to pull off this upset, if they are going to ensure that this game is closer than people expect, it's because the defense is doing its part and making sure that they are slowing down a Texas A&M offense that has the ability to put up a ton of points in a hurry. And Texas A&M has its own elite group. Marcel Reed is playing on a different level than we anticipated. He is playing really well in Colin Klein's system. He's making smart decisions. He's taking off with his legs when needed. He is playing with a confidence that we haven't seen from him in his career. And Colin Klein deserves a lot of credit too. Mike Elko decides that he's going to go with him as the offensive coordinator, and all he's done is find ways to put his quarterback in successful positions. That's been really fun. That's been huge for this Missouri team, or for this Texas A&M team, and Missouri has a lot on their plate just stopping the quarterback. The problem for Missouri is that you also have a deep running back room. Ruben Owens, Le'Veon Moss have been phenomenal for this rushing attack, and Marcel Reed has also been part of that. All three have over 300 yards rushing. The wide receiver position was the question coming in this year. You brought in Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion to be able to be the 1-2 punch, and they have delivered. Craver has been kind of the big surprise for this team. 40 catches, 716 yards, nearly 18 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. Concepcion, 36 catches, 545 yards, 7 touchdowns. That group has been the biggest difference outside of Marcel Reed, which has been really fun. It gives you a different element for teams to have to defend. And if Marcel Reed was going to play with confidence, you knew that he was going to be able to elevate this offense even more than he already had. That's going to be a tough group to stop. On top of that, Texas A&M's offensive line is one of the best in college football. You can make an argument that they are the best in college football. If Missouri is going to slow this team down, it's because their defensive line plays way better than Texas A&M's offensive line. The problem is that there haven't been a ton of teams that have done that consistently, and even after that, you still have to find a way to slow down Marcel Reed. That's going to be a big question for this group. The defense for Texas A&M too has kind of been a surprise in a way. You lost 3 NFL-type players on the defensive line, and you can make a strong argument that this defensive line is better than that group was, at least from a unit perspective. Cassius Howell has been insane this year. And if you're looking for good defensive line play, this is one of the games you should watch this weekend. Cassius Howell has been phenomenal for this defense. Mike Elko is loving what he sees from this group, and the defensive line is a big reason why. Torian York at linebacker is loving what he sees up front, and he's having a great year because of it. He's also very talented, but it helps when your defensive line plays at the level that it does right now. So if you're looking at this game from a winner's perspective, it's going to be tough for Missouri to win this game. Texas A&M is playing at a different level, and we just haven't seen that Missouri's offense can put up enough points. And their defense might slow down Texas A&M, but I trust that Colin Klein is going to have a counter for whatever Missouri has in play, and Marcel Reed is going to have another good game. I'm going with Texas A&M. I think that they're going to win on the road, but this one could be fun regardless of the result. Next, we're going to go with Oregon at Iowa. Now, playing at Iowa is going to be a challenge, but Oregon is a 5.5-point favorite, and both teams still are technically in the Big Ten Conference title race. Now, the problem is that Indiana and Ohio State are undefeated in conference play, and I don't see them losing anytime soon. So this might just be for a playoff spot for either team. Now, who do you trust more? Do you trust Oregon to continue doing what it's done so far this year and continue winning? Or do you trust that Iowa is going to make this as sloppy as possible, as difficult as possible, and find a way to stun the Ducks? That is going to be the big question. I don't trust Iowa's quarterback situation still. I don't trust their offense, but their defense has shown that it can keep them in games long enough for their offense to figure things out. The problem is that Oregon is a much different team to be able to do that against. So I'm going to go with the Ducks. I don't really trust that Iowa's going to do enough to keep things close, as well as make it so that they have a chance in this game. So I'm going to go with the Ducks in that one. Syracuse at Miami. Miami is a 28.5 point favorite, and they're coming off of a tough loss to SMU. This is an opportunity for Syracuse to kind of add the insult to injury, if you will, make things a lot more difficult. The problem is that I don't trust the quarterback situation at Syracuse at all, and Miami is a whole different animal that you have to contain. And Miami is coming off of a tough loss. They're still trying to keep whatever minuscule playoff hopes they have alive. So this is probably one that goes in Miami's favor. I'm going to predict that Miami wins this game, but keep an eye on this one for how Miami responds to a tough loss. Duke at UConn. This was a game that we talked about coming into the year that could be problematic for Duke. UConn is living up to those expectations. We knew that UConn could play at a high level, and there have been times where they've struggled, but this is a team that is going to be tough to beat. Now, Duke is an 8.5-point favorite. They're playing a lot better ever since they lost to Tulane, and they're technically still in the ACC conference title race. I'm going to go with Duke in this one. I don't really think that UConn can compete with Duke, especially with how well Duke's offense is playing. Darian Metz has been lights out at times. Now, UConn has the ability to move the ball down the field as well, but this Duke defense is going to give them more challenge than they've seen in quite some time. So I'm going with Duke to win this game. Kansas at Arizona. Arizona absolutely stomped Colorado last week, and they're 4.5-point favorites. Kansas started off the year strong, but has struggled as of recently. And we need Jalen Daniels to get back on track. We need this offense to get back on track if we're going to see them win this game. But we're also excited because Noah Fifita has been playing really well this year, and this offense has been exceeding expectations, which is weird to say when you lose a first-round talent like Tetairoa McMillan. But we also talked about that coming into the year. I talked about how maybe it's better for Noah Fifita to not have one guy be that reliable option, be that player that he just looks for by default. It's been good for them this year, and it's produced a lot of exciting results. Arizona is a very fun team, and with Kansas struggling right now and coming on the road, I'm going to go with Arizona in this one. I trust the momentum that they have right now, and if they're able to contain Jalen Daniels in that offense, they'll be in good hands. Iowa State at TCU. TCU is a 6.5-point favorite, and this is an Iowa State team that I think has been kind of disappointing this year. You've seen a lot of things from this group that you expected better of coming into the year, and it just hasn't happened. You haven't seen Rocco Beck play to the level that you expected, and the passing attack has definitely taken a step back this year. TCU is playing really well at times. You've also seen some things where you have some concerns, but they're playing at home. They're 6.5-point favorites. Josh Hoover has looked really good so far this year. The passing attack is very tough to defend. Iowa State is going to have their hands full in this one. I think that TCU is just the better team right now. They're playing at home, so I'm going to predict them to win this football game here to go to 7-2. Auburn at Vanderbilt. Auburn is playing their first game without Hugh Freeze. How will this team compete, or is this going to be just a derailment? Because we've seen Auburn play at a high level. We've seen their defense play really well at times, but how do they play after losing their head coach? Do they still have that same motivation? Do they still have that same energy? And also, even if they do, what's going to happen when Vanderbilt hits them in the mouth? Because this is a tough as nails Vanderbilt team that does not care that they lost their head coach. They're 7-point favorites, and they expect to win this football game. Does Auburn still compete, or do they eventually quit? That is the biggest question I have for this game. I'm going to go with Vanderbilt to win this football game. I just trust that they're a better team, and I don't really know what Auburn is going to look like in this one, so Vanderbilt is going to win. Washington at Wisconsin. I don't really know what the plan is for Wisconsin going forward with Luke Fickell. They're still technically able to make a bowl game, but Washington's an 11.5-point favorite. I don't trust that Wisconsin has the ability to keep this one close. I'm going to go with Washington. I trust Damon Williams in that offense. I don't have any idea of what Wisconsin's looking to do offensively, and this Washington defense has shown that they can shut teams down. Wake Forest at Virginia. Very underrated ACC game because both teams are better than expected. Wake Forest is 5-3, and they have some impressive wins. They're a lot better than people expect. Virginia, 6.5-point favorites. They are 8-1, and they sit at the top of the ACC. That's incredible. Tony Elliott deserves a lot of credit for what he has done. Chandler Morris has been a great addition to that offense, and this is a team that continues playing with a lot of confidence. I'm going to go with Virginia. I don't think that Wake Forest they're better. They're much better. And I think that this is going to be a challenge for Virginia, but I'm going to trust that Virginia continues playing at this level and continues elevating their game to stay at the top of the ACC. Another ACC game, Cal at Louisville. Louisville is an 18.5 point favorite. They're 7-1, still have their playoff hopes alive, technically. I think that they're still very much in that conversation. They're still very much in the conversation for the ACC championship. They're at home. Cal has shown at times that they struggle on the road, and they have a true freshman quarterback that has struggled mightily at times. I'm going to trust that Louisville is going to get the job done and win this one here. Florida State at Clemson. Another sticking in the ACC, 4-4 Florida State against 3-5 Clemson, which is very weird to say. Almost a little bit sad. I don't really know what we're going to get in this game. I don't really know what to expect. Both teams have had their fair share of struggles and do not look good. Clemson is a 2-point favorite at home. And if you're looking for an entertaining game, there are definitely better games in the ACC. So I'd say move on from now. I'm going to go with Florida State in this one. Clemson does not have any sort of trust for me whatsoever. I don't really know what they're going to be able to do. It really comes down to which offense plays more efficiently with their style. LSU at Alabama. LSU is going to be playing without Brian Kelly, who they fired, and it's a group that I don't really know what to expect. Are they going to play hard, or is Alabama just going to take over from here? That is a big-time question that I have, and a question that kind of dictates how close this game is going to be. Now, Ty Simpson is playing really well for Alabama. He's having a great year. The passing attack has been phenomenal. Biggest question for this group is, what happens if they have to run the ball? If LSU basically just sits back and said, okay, fine, we don't care that you're going to throw, you got to beat us running the football. So far this year, we haven't seen them being able to do that. That's going to be a big factor in this one, because Jam Miller has shown at times that he's been good, but otherwise we haven't seen anybody this year that's been super consistent. And the rushing attack overall has been pretty bleak at times. So if LSU is going to do one thing, it's probably, and this is going to sound really weird to say, dare Alabama to run the football, which is weird because Alabama's been so good at running the football for so long that you kind of just anticipate that they're going to be good at it. The problem is that they, like I said, have not been good. They have not been good at what they're doing on the ground, and that might be an area that LSU tries to exploit. Now, the big question for LSU is, which LSU team are we going to get? Is this still a team that is competing, that is fighting, or is this a team that we are going to have questions in terms of their effort, in terms of how long they fight? Because Alabama is going to throw punches. What does this group do? Is LSU going to just cave and move on? Or is this a group that suddenly has new life? Was Brian Kelly truly the problem with their motivation, with their abilities? That's going to be a question. We'll find out early in this game. We will find out if this LSU team truly is ready to compete and truly ready to take those punches and also throw punches of their own. I think that there's still very much an LSU team that has the ability to be explosive offensively. There's too much talent on this roster not to, right? It just feels like we're waiting for it to happen and we just haven't seen it. How they play in this game when things don't go their way is going to tell us a lot about what we're going to get from this LSU team for the rest of the year. That being said, I am going to go with for Alabama to win this game. I think that LSU just has so many things to figure out. Alabama, even with their deficiency running the football, is still a very good football team. I don't trust that LSU is going to figure things out offensively, even with the coaching change. So I think the Tide are going to roll in this one. Navy at Notre Dame. I think that Notre Dame is still going to take care of business. They're going to win this game, but Navy is, I think, a tougher team than people realize. That system they run is going to be difficult to defend, and Notre Dame is going to have their hands full. Notre Dame's still very much trying to make the college football playoffs, so they need to probably win this one by a lot. So I do think that they're going to do that, but it would be fun to see if Navy can keep this one close. Nebraska at UCLA. UCLA is a 3-point favorite, and normally you'd be surprised by that, but Dylan Raiola being out for the rest of the year is a big problem for Nebraska. That's a big concern for a team that is going to need their quarterback to play well. UCLA still playing with a lot more confidence ever since they made a coaching change, and they're more than ready to pull off a win here. And they're favored by 3 points. We'll see how Nico Iamaleava plays. How does Nebraska keep him in check? That is a big question that I have, because they need to contain him. This is not a Nebraska offense that's going to be able to move the ball efficiently like they did with Raiola. So they need their defense to play similar to how they played last week. I am going to go with UCLA in this one, which is disappointing to say. Nebraska, it just feels like a really tough spot to be in. But if there's someone that can figure it out for them, it's Matt Rule. I just have to go with UCLA at this point, given the circumstances. The final game that we'll talk about is San Diego State at Hawaii. San Diego State at Hawaii is one of those games that you don't necessarily pay attention to because the coverage of this game is not going to be great. Both of these teams are playing with a ton of confidence offensively. The difference here is that San Diego State's defense is playing much better than Hawaii's. That being said, Hawaii's defense is capable of being disruptive and making life difficult for this San Diego State team. Now, Sean Lewis has done a great job for the Aztecs. They're 7-1. They are taking care of business week in and week out, and their offense has elevated their game to a different level that we didn't see last year. The problem for Hawaii is that San Diego State's defense has also played really well. Now, before Sean Lewis got there, the Aztecs defense was a big reason why they won games. And you thought, okay, well, if they're going to shift to an offensive-minded guy, maybe that means that the defense will take a step back. That could not be further from the truth. They're giving up just 10 points per game, and they are going to be tough to move the ball on. Now, you look at what this team has done so far this year, they're playing some pretty good teams and keeping them in check. You look at what they did at Cal. Talk about a game that got out of hand. And that's exactly what you might see if Hawaii is not taking care of the football. Now, for San Diego State, their offense has been methodical at times, and running the football has been a big reason why. Lucky Sutton is having a massive year for this team. The stability at quarterback, thanks to Jaden Denegal, has been a big reason why they've had success as well. So you look at this group and think, okay, as long as they continue taking things and making it business as usual, they're going to be just fine. So this is going to be a fun group to watch and a fun team to see if they're able to continue playing at this level. I trust that they're going to be able to do that, and they're 6.5 point favorites. The problem is that they're traveling to Hawaii and playing a Hawaii team that is playing a lot better than people realize. This Hawaii team is a team that we talked about having the ability to potentially make a run in the Mountain West, and they're playing at a really high level at times. Now, last week, the defense kind of took a little bit of a break, unfortunately, and San Jose State exposed them. The nice thing is that San Diego State's offense is not San Jose State's offense. So if you're looking at a reason to be optimistic for Hawaii, that is your reason. This is not an elite offense by any means. They have the ability to make some elite plays, but you don't have the concern of stopping this team like you did with the Spartans. Now, Michael Alejado has to have a big game, has to play well, continue doing what he's been doing the last few games. That is going to be a big key, because if they're able to move the ball on this San Diego State defense, that's going to keep them in the game. That's going to put a lot of pressure on San Diego State. You also have to keep in mind that this is a San Diego State team that hasn't been in this position for a while. They have not been sitting at the top of the Mountain West. They have not been a team that is in that title conversation. This is new territory for a lot of these players. The pressure is all on San Diego State. Hawaii has zero pressure whatsoever. That should allow them to play free, make this game very interesting and closer than maybe people realize. If it's a high-scoring game, I trust that Hawaii is going to be able to win that game, because we've seen them do it before. We've seen that they're capable of putting up points consistently. If it's a low-scoring game or a little bit lower than what we've seen, I trust that the Aztecs are better fitted, better equipped for that. I don't trust that Hawaii can be super efficient and win a game by being disciplined and taking limited drives and putting those into points. San Diego State is a better team in that capacity. So How do they play this game? If you're Hawaii, you got to get the pace going. You got to pick it up. You got to get San Diego State to play at your level. If you're San Diego State, you just continue doing what you've done all year. You continue playing at the level that you're capable of, and there's a reason why you're 7-1. Continue doing that process. Continue playing at that level. If they're able to do that, they're in a great position. If Hawaii takes control of the pace, it's going to be tough for San Diego State to win that game. In terms of picking this game, I have to go with a more consistent team. San Diego State, I don't feel that they have as many flaws that can be exploited, but Hawaii has the ability to make this one interesting. So if you're looking for a late night game to finish your week 11 of college football, this is the one to do it. I'm going with San Diego State to continue their phenomenal season. Hawaii is going to be good, but I don't know if they have the efficiency or the discipline enough to be able to keep this one closer. If they're able to put up points, maybe. But if they have to be efficient, I trust that the Aztecs are more capable of doing that on a consistent basis.